Bolivia, following the presidential debate, the candidate for the sitting Community Coalition claimed he would recognize the results of the October 18th polls. Canada's Premier François Legault has promised to apologize to the family of Joyce Echaquan, who was taunted with racial slurs by healthcare staff. South Sudan, in collaboration with the UN Children's Agency, has launched a campaign to end rampant child marriages in the East African country. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Laura Palmeiro. And following the presidential debate without the participation of the movement towards socialism, Luis Arce, the presidential candidate for the Citizen Community Coalition, Carlos Mesa, who was involved in the COP of 2019, stressed he would recognize the results of the October 18th vote, despite refusing to recognize those of the elections held in October 2019.
Yes, we are going to respect the result of this election because we believe in the Supreme Electoral Tribunal, because we are aware that it will carry out a proper job with an international observation that will verify it.
In Bolivia, the second constitutional chamber of the Court of Justice has ruled out the request presented by Bolivian Senator Carmen Eva González, who had demanded that the court force the electoral body to withdraw the legal status of the movement towards socialism. The legal challenge was presented by the senator as a means to prevent the participation of the movement towards socialism in the upcoming general elections of October 18th. González based her complaint on alleged statements by mass presidential candidate Luis Arce in July regarding an international poll placing him 18 points ahead of the candidate for the Citizen Community Coalition, Carlos Mesa. The senator claimed that the poll was publicized outside the period established by the electoral calendar. Meanwhile, the de facto government of Janine Áñez and representatives of the Organization of American States have signed an agreement of privileges and immunities for the OAS Electoral Observation Mission for the elections in the country. Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador announced the return of a caravan of migrants to Honduras on Monday. During a press conference with his cabinet, the president stated that a group of more than 2,000 migrants who left the Honduran city of San Pedro Sula on October 1st had returned to their home country. He noted that due to the efforts of the Honduran and Guatemalan authorities, the migrants were convinced about the health risk posed by the journey to reach the United States in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. The National Institute of Migration deployed thousands of agents in the state of Chiapas on the border with Guatemala to contain the caravan that included women and minors. Peru's main international airport resumed operations on Monday after being closed for nearly 6 months due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The reopening ceremony was attended by President Martín Vizcarra, who noted that health protocols were adopted to ensure the resumption of activities does not result in an increase in COVID-19 cases in the country. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Transport and Communications has authorized flights to and from 11 destinations located in 7 neighboring and nearby countries, among them Ecuador, Bolivia, Panama, and Colombia. The Jorge Chávez International Airport halted its operation on March 22nd, although it began limited services for domestic flights on July 16th. Meanwhile, Peru ranks 7th in the world in terms of the number of confirmed COVID-19 cases.
Here we all have a double challenge right now to continue with our task of containing COVID-19, as we are doing as the figures show. It has been 8 weeks of continual decline.
First of all, rapidity. Second, security, which is the most important thing because it will prevent overcrowding and will make the migration process much faster. Before, it used to take 1.5 to 2 minutes, and today we are going to do in less than 24 seconds. My holidays were on March 15, and because of the pandemic, I stayed until now, and it's been 7 months that I have not come to Santiago de Chile. I came to visit my family, and now I return for the work that awaits me there.
In addressing the United Nations Security Council on Monday, the special representative of the Secretary General and head of the United Nations Integrated Office in Haiti noted that the country is once again struggling with instability, while adding that violence and human rights violations persist in the country.
The continued lack of trust between political forces is impeding all but the slightest progress on priorities that had previously garnered a wide consensus across the political spectrum, such as the necessity to undertake constitutional reform to better reflect current Haitian realities and address key shortcomings of the 1987 Constitution prior to holding new elections. Above all else, it is the ability of Haiti's political and economic classes to compromise and resolve their differences without resorting to violence, as well as the capacity of the country's fledgling institutions to take the necessary steps that will determine whether free, fair, and inclusive elections will be held in a conducive climate.
On Monday, Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley, condemned the European Union's decision to place the country on a blacklist of states that it claims are non-cooperative jurisdictions for tax purposes, due to the country's failure to implement a number of changes to its tax exchange framework between July 2050 and July 2018, despite the fact that the necessary legislative framework was put in place by December 2019 by the current government.
And I wrote the Chancellor of Germany this weekend again, and I wrote the President of the European Commission, Charles Michel, this weekend again. I told them that it is wrong and disproportionate. It is like giving a man who got a spliff a death sentence or 25 years in prison. It is disproportionate. And why? Because they're going to get their banks and their financial institutions to put measures on us. And we say that when they try to do that, most of the banks say, but Barbados is too small. They don't even think that we are a problem for them, because as far as they're concerned, we are a dot on the map. But a dot on the map means that they can just say to people, we ain't banking with you. We ain't doing business with you. And companies that may have been here 50 years, 60 years, 70 years, 100 years, no stand to be affected.
And we'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. After 8 days of protest, Canada's Premier François Legault has promised to apologize to the family of Joyce Echaquan, who was taunted by racial slurs by healthcare staff as she lay dying in a hospital bed. Legault made the announcement during a press conference on the novel coronavirus on Monday. He said what happened to Ms. Echaquan is totally unacceptable and embarrassing. Earlier, the Premier met with leaders of the Atinacam indigenous community. The group proposed that training and guidance programs be created for health workers to better serve members of indigenous communities. United States President Donald Trump was discharged from the Walter Reed Military Hospital on Monday, 3 days after being admitted with COVID-19 and a vote to be back on the campaign trail soon. Early Monday, Trump downplayed the threat of the virus, which has killed over 210,000 people in the United States only, tweeting that he was feeling really good and adding, "Don't be afraid of COVID. Don't let it dominate your life." Trump's physician, Sean Conley, told reporters that the president will be monitored closely as the White House and that may not be entirely out of the woods yet. Questions remain over the seriousness of Trump's illness after a weekend of conflicting statements, while the true scale of the outbreak of the White House remains unclear. Meanwhile, according to a poll by the Wall Street Journal and NBC News, Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden enjoyed a 14-point lead over Trump following the presidential debate held last week. The United Kingdom Court of Appeals this Monday overturned the decision that granted Venezuelan opposition lawmaker Juan Guaidó control of 31 tons of Venezuelan gold reserves held by the Bank of England. In September, the Venezuelan Central Bank filed an appeal against the British High Court decision that prevented President Nicolás Maduro's government from accessing the gold reserves, valued at more than $1 billion at the time, deposited in the Bank of England in London. Judge Stephen Mills said that the UK's recognition of Juan Guaidó, who self-declared himself president of Venezuela, was ambiguous. Sarosh Saiwala, lawyer for the Venezuelan Central Bank, noted that the previous court decision was not correct as it granted control of the reserves to a group of people living outside Venezuela, who the Constitutional Court in Venezuela had already ruled not to have no lawful authority. The UK government has acknowledged the failure of its COVID-19 track and trace system, while noting that over 15,000 positive tests for the novel coronavirus were not included in the update issued on Friday last week due to the technical glitch. The announcement comes in the midst of a heavy criticism over the Prime Minister Boris Johnson's handling of the epidemic, as well as limited testing capacity and delays in notifying people of their COVID-19 test results, as the UK sees a surge in cases.
Health England identified that over the previous 8 days, 15,841 positive test results were not included in the reported daily cases. This was due to a failure in the automated transfer of files from the labs to PHE's data systems. I want to reassure everyone that every single person who tested positive was told that result in the normal way, in the normal time frame. Yesterday, there were 12,594 new positive cases. The rise is more localised than first time round, with cases rising particularly sharply in the northeast and the northwest of England and parts of Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. Now more than ever, with winter ahead, we must all remain vigilant and get this virus under control.
French authorities decided to put the capital Paris on maximum alert from Monday after a steady rise in the number of COVID-19 cases. Health authorities have reported 203 active COVID-19 clusters in the wider Paris region, while over 12,500 new cases were confirmed on Sunday.
The epidemic is going too fast. We must curb it now before our health system is submerged. The numbers will quite easily show this, and we must do this, in particular, while avoiding shattering our country. Starting from tomorrow, all bars will be closed. Restaurants, which we define as establishments whose principal activity is the sale of meals. This is a discussion underway with the Professional Federation at the moment. Can remain open at their normal hours, subject to a new health protocol validated by the High Council of Public Health. From tomorrow, in the academic venues, university level, classrooms, lecture halls, refectories, capacity will be limited to 50% in order to take into account the health situation in Paris. Everyone has prepared for this and understands it.
3 more bodies were discovered on the French side of the border with Italy this Monday, following severe flooding in mountain border areas of both countries over the weekend. The death toll linked to the floods now stands at 12, while hundreds of rescue workers were searching for up to 20 people who are still missing. Flooding devastated mountainous areas in France's southeastern Alpes Maritimes region and Italy's northwestern regions of Liguria and Piedmont, after a storm swept over them on Friday and Saturday. The missing include 2 French firefighters whose vehicle was carried away by a torrent when a road collapsed. Authorities fear there are more victims, as many people couldn't be reached because cell phone services was down. Meanwhile, the flooding has put additional pressure on regions coping with the COVID-19 pandemic.
It's a catastrophic situation. This has not happened in 1,000 years. The river, I think, took the path of its curse of origin. We've been building around it, and all of that is gone. No more camping ground, no stadium, no more swimming pool, no more shops. A hotel is gone. Dozens of inhabitants missing. Entire houses swallowed by the floods. It's a phenomenal disaster.
German authorities have condemned an attack on a 26-year-old Jewish student who was wounded outside a synagogue in Hamburg on Sunday. Meanwhile, police have launched an investigation into the incident, which they are treating as attempted murder with anti-Semitic intention.
The federal government is appalled by this act of violence against a Jewish fellow citizen yesterday. Yesterday, the Jews celebrated the so-called Feast of Tabernacles, Sukkot, and we condemn this attack in the strongest terms. It is shameful that a citizen of Jewish faith is attacked on the open street in Germany.
And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. South Sudan, in collaboration with the UN Children's Agency UNICEF, has launched a campaign to end rampant child marriages in the West African country. The campaign was launched under the slogan, "Some things are not fit for children. Marriage is not one of them." It seeks to highlight how child marriage can be damaging the girls' education, development, and ultimately their futures. According to UNICEF, 52% of all girls in South Sudan are married before age 18, a cultural practice fueled by debilitating poverty. This Monday, Russian authorities reiterated the call for an urgent ceasefire between Armenia and Azerbaijan in the disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region. Following a phone call with his Azerbaijani counterpart, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov highlighted his government's concern over the increase in civilian casualties resulting from the armed conflict. He also pointed out that Russia would continue to work with Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe to resume negotiations aimed at finding a solution to the regional dispute. Likewise, he noted the readiness to host a meeting between the Armenian and Azerbaijani foreign ministers in the Russian capital, Moscow, with the participation of the Minsk Group. The United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs has called for an end to the hostilities in the Nagorno-Karabakh region, while highlighting that more than 40 civilians have reportedly been killed and over 200 wounded on both sides of the conflict between Azerbaijan and Armenia.
The UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs today said that they remain deeply concerned about the ongoing hostilities along the line of contact in the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict zone. They urge an immediate end to the fighting. Our humanitarian colleagues tell us that the hostilities reportedly continue to cause the loss of civilian lives and injuries, as well as damage to civilian properties and infrastructure. From the beginning of the latest round of hostilities for today, more than 40 civilians have reportedly been killed, and more than 200 others have been wounded on both sides. Hundreds of houses have been seriously damaged.
Anti-government demonstrators in Kyrgyzstan seized the parliament building on Monday to protest the result of the parliamentary elections held on Sunday. Group of protesters broke through the compound near the parliament building, which also houses the executive branch. Police forces controlled the situation in the area after violent clashes with supporters of opposition parties that have refused to recognize the results of the elections and called for new elections. Meanwhile, preliminary results show that of the 16 parties in the race, the pro-government Unity Party and My Homeland Kyrgyzstan Party secured around a quarter of the votes each in the vote to determine the 120 seats of the country's Supreme Council. Demonstrators took to the streets in Lebanon's capital Beirut on Monday to protest against rising prices and worsening economic conditions across the country. Dozens of protesters shuffled with security forces when they briefly blocked a major highway connecting the capital with Lebanon's northern zones. The demonstrations come in the midst of a currency collapse, which has seen the local currency lose 80% of its value over the past few years, thus leaving many people unable to meet their basic needs amid a sharp increase in prices. Meanwhile, the Lebanese government has started official talks with the International Monetary Fund to secure billions of dollars through the bailout package. Iraqi President Barham Salih held an official meeting with the United Nations Special Representative for Iraq in the capital, Baghdad, on Monday to address the country's general elections set for June next year. According to the President's press office, the discussions during the meeting reiterated the importance of the upcoming elections, as well as the need to ensure the highest standards of the integrity and transparency at all stages of the electoral process. The UN Special Envoy Janine Hannes plus Shirt noted the need to coordinate between the United Nations and Iraq's Electoral Commission regarding electoral observation missions to rebuild credibility and the confidence of voters, while also underlining the Iraqi national project on the consolidation of the state authority. Kenyan health authorities confirmed 22 new COVID-19 cases on Monday, bringing the total number to over 39,000 cases.
I'll now turn to our COVID-19 statistics over the last 24 hours. We have 595 confirmed cases. We tested 595, After testing 595 samples, we have 22 confirmed positive cases, which brings our total number of positives to 39,449. Our cumulative tests.
And we have come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Laura Palmeiro. Thank you for watching.